he'd be basically in contempt of that particular court order because it gives the curators access to any property that he has, access to any financial interest records that have been traced and are yet to be traced.
They stormed his Sandton mansion at dawn. Black SUVs, flashing blue lights, and officers carrying warrants worth Rand's 520 million. Inside, the nephew of President Cyril Ramaphosa watched as investigators stripped his world apart, seizing luxury cars, million-rand art, and files linking him to hospital corruption deals. For years, Hangwani Maumela moved like an untouchable man, wrapped in power and family privilege. But when the law finally came knocking, one question echoed through South Africa. Is this justice catching up, or a system cleaning its own before the next election?
Hangwani Maumela, who's an alleged kingpin of the looting of the Tembisa hospital.
Before the headlines screamed his name, Hangwani Maumela was one of those slick, quietly powerful businessmen who always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. His rise wasn't loud or dramatic, it was strategic. A sharp dresser with a taste for the finer things, Maumela built a reputation as a deal-maker who could open doors others couldn't even knock on. Through well-placed business ventures and political charm, he made his way into the elite circles of influence that orbit around South Africa's ruling party, the ANC. Money flowed, contracts rolled in, and his name started popping up in company registries linked to government tenders. What made his case more explosive was his family connection to President Cyril Ramaphosa. Maumela isn't just some distant relative, he's the president's nephew by marriage. A relationship that gave him both prestige and proximity to real power. Being family to the most powerful man in the country comes with perks, but it also comes with scrutiny, and Maumela seemed to thrive under both. Those close to him described him as confident, calculated, and always 2 steps ahead. He moved like a man who knew how to play both business and politics, and that's exactly what made him dangerous when things started falling apart. Before the scandal broke, Maumela's world was built on influence and access. He had his hands in several industries, from construction to healthcare procurement. But most of his wealth came from government contracts, especially those tied to public institutions. For years, rumors swirled about how his companies managed to consistently secure lucrative deals, often without competition or oversight. He brushed it off as jealousy, claiming he was just a successful entrepreneur who understood the system. But behind the scenes, insiders whispered about favoritism, inflated invoices, and shell companies.
Care has been stolen from the Tembisa hospital, and the SIU is not backing down on bringing the culprits to book. What's happening there?
The story really blew open when the Special Investigating Unit, SIU, turned its attention to the Tembisa hospital scandal, a corruption saga so brazen it shocked even those who thought they'd seen it all. Investigators uncovered massive irregularities in the Gauteng health system, where money meant for life-saving equipment and medicine was instead funneled through shady service providers. And at the center of it all, according to multiple reports from the African and IOL, sat Hangwani Maumela, the president's nephew. The SIU found what looked like a procurement syndicate, a network of companies working together to loot public funds under the guise of legitimate contracts. These weren't random suppliers. Many were linked directly to Maumela through associates, business partners, or shell corporations. According to the African and YFM.co.za, investigators believe Maumela's network used a simple but effective trick. They split tenders, breaking large contracts into smaller ones that flew under the radar of auditing systems. They then manipulated invoices, charged inflated prices, and evaded oversight altogether.
Now, this particular tycoon is said to have benefited almost 900 million rand from the looted funds, and you'd also see several law enforcement officers as well as trucks.
The numbers tell a chilling story. IOL reported that over R816 million in procurement bundles could be traced back to Maumela's business network, an almost unimaginable amount of taxpayer money. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 companies doing this. Investigations by the African revealed that at least 41 service providers were tied to his syndicate. These firms acted as money channels, moving funds between accounts until the trail went cold. In some cases, companies were registered under the names of relatives, domestic workers, or even employees who had no idea their names were being used. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became that this wasn't some sloppy crime. It was an organized system built to extract money from public health care with precision. Hospitals ran short on critical supplies, but invoices kept getting paid, and while patients suffered, Luxury cars rolled into Maumela's driveway. Reports from the African described an empire built on fraud and front companies, hidden behind layers of corporate paperwork. For Ramaphosa, the political fallout was immediate. The optics were brutal. A president preaching clean governance while his own nephew stood accused of bleeding the healthcare system dry. Opposition parties demanded answers. Citizens demanded justice. And the SIU moved fast, freezing Rand's $520 million in assets linked to Maumela's empire. The scandal wasn't just another corruption headline. It was a wake-up call. If family members of the president can exploit the system this openly, what hope is there for accountability anywhere else?
They take ownership or control of any really assets that may be of the auction value of about 900 million rand.
When the Special Investigating Unit, SIU, finally moved in, it was like something out of a political thriller. Early morning, black SUVs lined up outside Hangwani Maumela's Sandton mansion, engines idling, while officers in plain clothes fanned out across his property. According to SA people, it wasn't just a raid. It was a full-scale operation that stretched across multiple provinces, including another one of his lavish homes in Mpumalanga. Neighbors watched from behind curtains as law enforcement trucks rolled in, ready to seize everything tied to the corruption probe that had already shaken the corridors of power. Inside his Sandton estate, investigators found a world dripping with excess. SA people reported that Maumela's home looked more like a private art museum than a residence. Walls lined with high-end pieces, some worth millions, and sculptures imported from Europe. The garage was a collector's dream: Ferraris, Bentleys, Range Rovers, and a limited edition Lamborghini. Every inch of the place screamed power and privilege. The kitchen was custom-built, the marble flown in from Italy, and the home gym rivaled a luxury wellness club. Each detail of the raid exposed just how far corruption money can stretch when left unchecked. By the time the operation ended, investigators had frozen assets worth roughly Rand's $520 million. This included properties, vehicles, art collections, and offshore accounts. According to SABC News, the High Court granted the SIU and the Asset Forfeiture Unit, AFU, permission to enforce a preservation order, meaning Maumela couldn't touch a single cent of his empire. The order was part of South Africa's asset forfeiture laws, which allow authorities to freeze assets believed to be the proceeds of crime, even before a conviction. It's a legal hammer designed for cases exactly like this one, where money is hidden in layers of shell companies and paper trails that twist through multiple bank accounts. But this wasn't going to be easy. The SIU quickly realized that not all of Maumela's assets were within reach. Some of his wealth was buried in offshore accounts and foreign investments, hidden behind corporate structures that stretched across jurisdictions. The investigation had to navigate international cooperation, slow court procedures, and valuation disputes. Even assessing the true worth of what was seized became a challenge. Luxury cars depreciate, art doesn't, and property values shift by the day. Legal teams fought over everything from appraisals to ownership records. What the SIU thought would be a straightforward sting turned into a complex chess match of law and money.
Are seizing the property of a businessman linked to a syndicate accused of looting at the Tembisa hospital. These are some of the cars, that are owned by this person.
The fallout hit the presidency like a bomb. Within hours of the raids making headlines, President Cyril Ramaphosa's team scrambled to manage the crisis. According to several political analysts, the first reaction from the union buildings was shock, not at the allegations themselves, but at the optics. A corruption scandal tied directly to the president's family was political poison, and they knew it. Ramaphosa's spokesperson issued a brief statement expressing full confidence in the legal process and zero tolerance for corruption, carefully avoiding any mention of his nephew by name. It was the classic political move. Distance first, details later. But the media wasn't going to let it slide. Within hours, every major outlet in South Africa was running front-page stories about the Rand's $520 million asset freeze, linking Maumela to both the Tembisa hospital corruption and a wider network of fraudulent contracts. Talk shows erupted with debate. Radio hosts grilled government officials live on air. Social media went into overdrive with hashtags like #Ramaphosa Nephew and #Rand's $520 million scandal trending for days. The public outrage wasn't just about the money, it was about what it symbolized. That corruption had reached straight into the president's own family. Opposition parties pounced. The Democratic Alliance, DA, and the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, demanded a parliamentary inquiry into the scandal, calling it proof that Ramaphosa's anti-corruption stance was all talk and no action. They accused the ANC of protecting its own, while ordinary citizens suffered under failing hospitals and broken infrastructure. One EFF spokesperson said bluntly, "If the president's nephew can loot a hospital while people waiting for care, then this government has lost its moral right to lead." The statement hit hard because it resonated with millions of frustrated South Africans who had seen this story play out too many times. Behind the scenes, damage control went into full swing. Political insiders leaked that Ramaphosa had cut all personal ties with Maumela, emphasizing that family connections didn't equal complicity. But those efforts did little to calm the storm. Leaked internal memos suggested there were attempts to contain the narrative, to steer media coverage toward ongoing investigations rather than presidential scandal. Still, selective leaks from within the ANC told a different story. Some insiders accused rival factions of using the case to weaken Ramaphosa's leadership ahead of the next election. This story isn't just about one man or his fortune. It's about how close corruption can crawl to the highest seat of power. When the president's own nephew is accused of siphoning millions from public funds, it doesn't just raise eyebrows. It shakes the foundation of trust in the system itself. For years, South Africans have watched scandal after scandal unfold, each one promising to be the turning point. Yet every time the powerful walk away untouched, while ordinary people keep struggling under broken hospitals, collapsing infrastructure, and empty promises. The Hangwani Maumela saga feels different, though. It hits closer to home, because it's family. The symbolism here is almost poetic. A man related to the president, the face of supposed reform, caught in a web of alleged looting that robbed public health care. It's a slap in the face to every citizen who believes in clean governance. The question that people keep asking is simple. If the president's own blood is knee-deep in scandal, who can really be trusted? This isn't just about financial corruption. It's about moral decay. The idea that power can exist without consequence is what's truly dangerous. For many, this scandal represents a crossroads. Either it's proof that the untouchables are finally being exposed, or it's just another show where justice plays pretend. The public reaction shows both anger and exhaustion. Anger at the theft and exhaustion from hearing the same story over and over again. Every time an official promises accountability, people hope this time it'll stick. Yet, hope is wearing thin.
Have you seen any of those vehicles? Do we know the type of vehicles that are being seized?
Paul, we've only been able to spot one luxurious vehicle, and my knowledge of cars is quite basic, but I can assure you that that was a Lamborghini that I saw.
For Hangwani Maumela, the real battle has just begun. On paper, the SIU may have frozen Rand's $520 million in assets, but legally, that's only the first step in a long and messy war. His lawyers are already preparing to challenge everything, from the valuations of his seized properties to the court's jurisdiction. They'll argue that some of his wealth came from legitimate business deals, that the state overreached, that the evidence is circumstantial. These defenses might sound technical, but in South Africa's legal system, technicalities can buy time, and time is power. Meanwhile, the SIU still has to prove the core of its case. Freezing assets is one thing. Tracing the dirty money back to the hospital tenders is another. Investigators need to show a clear link between Maumela's companies and the fraudulent payments, a money trail that often snakes through offshore accounts, fake invoices, and shell corporations. The hardest part is getting cooperation from foreign banks where funds may have been hidden. Without that, the case risks stalling in legal limbo, buried under paperwork and appeals. There are a few possible endings here, and none of them are clean. If the evidence sticks, Maumela could face serious jail time and permanent asset forfeiture. There's also the possibility of a plea deal, where he gives up part of his fortune in exchange for leniency, a common strategy in high-profile financial crimes. But even if he avoids prison, his reputation is shattered. The image of a wealthy businessman tied to one of the biggest hospital corruption scandals will never fade. For President Ramaphosa, the political risks are enormous. Even if he had nothing to do with his nephew's business dealings, perception is everything. Opposition parties are already painting this as proof that corruption sits right at his doorstep. Within the ANC, the scandal adds more pressure to an already fractured leadership struggling with internal loyalty wars. Ramaphosa's credibility as the cleanup president now hangs by a thread. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.